It's gonna be 10 minutes before I finish the chapter. It just started.
Do it. I'll see you in 10.
Here, you got
I'm
to
good.
flashback to high school and do it at 1 o'clock in the morning like I did.
Well, I was still awake at 1 o'clock in the morning, but I was doing something else.
And you slept until the afternoon. I don't know the last time I slept in and it was a PM when I woke up.
I went to bed at 5 in the morning.
What? In this economy? Why?
Well, I'm not working, but I got my shots to do a demo reel, so I was working on that.
Joggy Pokey says, why don't you age, Maude? Is it the blood of virgins? Everyone thinks virgins. They're actually really not as good. I've tried that. My favorite part, Tim's got his video on. That's who you heard. I can see all of his reactions now. Maybe I preferred it when I couldn't, because that judgment was ferocious. Just you're like, I think that's...
That was not judgment. That was a what?
Yeah, we joke about not... I'm drinking wine. I'm going to be away for a week, so it's going to go off, so I just decided I'm going to finish the bottle. Waste not, want not. Jazz Parks, that's a name I haven't seen for a bit. How are you, my love? I'm about to finish my second run-through of The Night Circus, and I'm not ready. The Night Circus, we did that one for Nerdist. What an amazing book. Actually, it was a 3.5. But Jim Dale narrates it, and that was a very, very good time. Hello to Adam Vision. Is everyone sitting down? I can see that Tim is. Adam Vision and I are going to meet this weekend for the very first time. 2.5 years of friendship and gaming and yelling at each other. 2.5 years. Dun, dun, dun. We're going to meet. Don't disappoint me, my dude. Oddball says, I haven't finished the reading because I've gone on another trip for work. Where are you this time in the world? Lisa says, that's exciting. Play the Board says, so cool. Thierry says, taking the plane tomorrow for New York City Comic Con. Thierry, I'm getting up at 3:30 in the morning. I'm getting up at 3:30. I have packed, which is good. And straight after this, you're in Ohio, Oddball. Oh, fun times. I don't think I've been to Ohio. If I have to be at the airport that early, I just stay up. I've done that before. I've actually, shouldn't say this. This has been broadcast. What if I whisper it? I partied all night and showed up to the airport drunk. Definitely slept on the plane. Woke up very hungover. Do not recommend. And yeah, Zelda's already at her sitters. Yes, that was then. They don't live close to me, but they're very, very good people. So I had to drive quite a bit. So it's an errand day. Boost train is here. What's a boost train? What's a boost train? I go away for a couple of weeks and there's a boost train. Complete each level to recommend this street. Can everyone else see this? What's a boost train? Do I still get my conductors? That was the best part. I like my train conductors. Velox Scripter, I swear there's a better way I can say that, says rescribing for 7 months in a row. Maud Squad coming through. Ooh. Because I want to say like Velociraptor, but it's not. It's Velox Scripter. Vaden dropping some bits. Thank you, Vaden. I heard you having a chat about something when I just came on, but I didn't hear it, so I can't answer the question if there was a question. And now there's a super chat also, Maud. There's no way I can ask my community to super chat where I stream twice, maybe 3 times, sometimes 4 times a month. Wait. No, more than that. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Sometimes 7. Tommy Stories says hi. A big hello to you. Zelly's at the sitters. She's at my friend's house. My friends are obsessed with my dog. They love Zelda so much. They have great taste. Amanda's like, how did I miss all these updates for Twitch? Same. I know Twitch have been trying to do a bunch more things. Some were good, some we'll see. So yay. I got book club in one ear and the last chapter in the other. Oi, Cherry, doing it well. Down to the line. Okay, cool. Alrighty, so let's talk about this book. First question that we ask. Oh, we got an emote for it if you're lucky enough. Can I find it? Here it is. Book good? Book good? How are we? Oh, thank you, Michelle, with your 200 bits as well. Appreciate that one. Jazz says we're all obsessed with your dog. We've got new Zelda emotes as well. That's Zelda sleeping. Vane says, I think I'm book meh at this point. All right, I'm going to start yelling names and give me a little summary of how you're finding this. Let's start with Kate. First read, second read?
Read.
First, well, it just cut off.
First read.
First read! How are you finding it?
Oh. Liking it so far. I mean, I like Gillian Flynn's writing a lot, so I'm enjoying it.
I thought if anyone was, you might, because when I start reading it, I feel a little depressed. And I was like, I bet Caitlin loves this. Hey, Ropanda, thank you so much for gifting a sub to Akoto Roku. Really appreciate you, Ropanda, especially because I swear I saw your name pop up. Yes, there it is. Subscribed 7 months in a row, 9 total. Thank you, Ropanda. Love having you around here, especially every time I see Ropanda, I picture a panda, and that is a good time. So Kate likes this one. Book good, having a good time. You like Gillian Flynn's writing, as do I, which is good. We can turn the music down a little bit though. Lise, how are you finding this one?
I'm liking it so far. I'm really hating his girlfriend, Deandra, whatever her name is.
Yeah.
But
She's what happens.
I'm liking this.
See, this, I don't want to be judgy, but I mean, it's super, super interesting where it's like the rules or lack of that you had as a kid, and sort of like there's such a fine balance between go out there and experience the world and, you know, being sort of so, having life be so strict that you can't experience anything because you're basically run by fear. And where that sort of falls on the threshold, because everyone knows the friend whose parents are always away or parents didn't care. And everyone kind of jumped on that as like a bit of freedom. But this is a... Kate, not mincing words at all. Where's my full chatting? Oh, it is there. Kate says, she's a garbage, trash, dirt person. Yeah, sometimes I try to say it in a delicate way, but I just wait for Kate to say the truth. Just blatantly, sharply. Thank you for that. Deandra fucking sucks. Michelle says, book makes me worried for all of these characters. I know. I read books like this and my privilege starts showing. And that's like, I know it's all fiction, and it's just a book, but I'm like, wow, I can't relate to, just parents split up. So I'm now a stripper and I have a kid, but I'm going to try and exploit money from you. And I'm going to start blatantly spreading lies because, yes, Thierry. Ding, 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 Chrissy. Because when I spread lies, that gives me purpose and makes me feel more important. I can't relate to that. That goes completely against my ethos of doing the right thing or justice or being nice. The other part, great. Kate says, Lyle, bro, you have zero social skills. The other part I can't relate to are people fixated with crime and believing that if you're in jail, then you're innocent, and then having very strange relationships and almost pseudo falling in love with. Yeah. Who was that?
Hey, I just wanted, because you're talking about that right now, so I just wanted to, because it's one of the things that I found very interesting and kind of upsetting in this book so far, is I am someone who reads a lot of true crime, this stuff, and way they were treating her was, I feel, like the worst stereotype of a true person is, you know what I mean?
Tell me more about that.
About which part?
So you're saying, I mean, there's the kill club, and then there's those that are quite fixated and supportive and enamored by Ben. But then and then others who are glorifying murderers and serial killers to her face, in a way. But this is someone who has I mean, I feel like the word traumatized is thrown around a lot these days. But when we look at what trauma stems from, she's had probably the most traumatic experience that exists.
She is absolutely traumatized. Like, I know that in the Discord chat, Terry made a comment about a lot of Gillian Flynn's characters being unlikable, which is true. I don't find Libby unlikable, like in the same way that the Gone Girl characters were.
She was manipulative. This is broken.
Things that she's doing would be frustrating to deal with, and like the whole thing about her being estranged from her Aunt Diane, all of that, it's like you understand it if you would be in that situation in real life. There's just only so much you can deal with someone else's trauma if they're not helping themselves.
Yes.
As a reader, find it made her unlikable. The Kill Club were unlikable. Lyle is unlikable. And the part where it's just like, wanted to go back to the true crime thing, is the person, like all these Kill Club people like Lyle and Magda and all of those people, are the people that kind of picture when you think of true crime enthusiasts. Enthusiast is not a good word to use for that, but there is a fascination with the darker part of humanity, and a lot of like following true crime, like that's the part that I enjoy. True crime.
Yeah, I run the other way. I'm like, oh, you do some really, really awful stuff. Ooh.
But if you like, for more like an academic kind of psychological thing, you're not glorifying the murderers, right? Like these are garbage, dirt, ash. But you do have that part where you see it a lot with, look at what's happening right now with the TikTok response to the Jeffrey Dahmer show on Netflix.
Yes.
They're all like, oh, I wish he was still alive so I could like hug him, and I wish that they would have just been like a couple or whatever. It's like, no, you don't have the, especially because most of these are like 14-year-olds on TikTok, but you don't have the mental capacity to understand the difference between fantasy and reality.
And raise
like
the standards.
The academic, and also between the academic desire for the knowledge of the darkness of the human psyche compared to like idolizing a monster kind of thing.
100% agree with you. And I actually am fascinated about the why. I thought that Mind Hunter on Netflix was one of the most fascinating shows, where it was
that show was great. I'm so pissed that it's not on anymore.
Same. It was so good because you are interacting with these serial killers, and they are unnerving and disturbing, and they are not glorifying murder.
So the Kill Club is because the people who do follow true crime kind of like, for that aspect, wouldn't go to this convention because it's gross. It's glorifying. It's like, these are people, like, there's a woman in real life named Sandra London who's like a serial killer groupie, and she's a nightmare person. But these people, I think a lot of times you see it too, where a lot of times they're super religious, or they have a savior complex where it's like, I can save this monster. So it's like trying to get them to convert, trying to,
yes,
like their angel of mercy. Like, it's very strange like that. And also a lot of these people who follow murderers and glorify them are like Lyle. They have no social skills. They have no friends outside of like their Kill Club. They could never have a normal conversation with a normal human being. So
but their obsession is their purpose, and it's interesting.
They're just as dysfunctional as Libby is, in a different way, though.
So I was just talking, the reason why I was late, I had therapy. I had a great conversation about this type of thing. Communities where they truly believe that what they are doing is right, and this virtue signaling and what they believe to be justice. So Lyle truly thinks that he's doing God's work by finding the real truth. And this community is built around that singular purpose, and that is connecting them. So they are feeling fulfilled by having a social interaction and a group with a like-minded interest that is going towards what they truly believe is justice.
Yeah, Catch-22 just put Lyle as exploitive, and I believe that because Magda is more like that, where she's like in love with Ben. She wants him to, she's like super into like the conspiracy theory of him being innocent and all that, which actually might not be a conspiracy theory.
Well, it was going more against your thing where the using religion and Christianity as, you know, and I was listening to that, I was like, ugh. And it's like, no, I think that the most Christian thing that I can do is love the unlovable. No, babe, it's your choice.
But Lyle, I feel like because he has no social, he obviously has there's something going on with Lyle in terms, I think he's probably on the spectrum somewhere because of utter lack of being able to understand that his line of questioning with Chrissy was way out of line and just unbelievable. But he kept going like, it's a good theory, right? It's a good theory, right? About all his theories. He wants to solve it so he can be right. And I think a lot of the Kill Club is also, this book was written kind of before the super big advent of social media. Like the internet was obviously there, but we weren't as tragically online back when this book was written.
I fucking hate social
and
media.
These people, the way they talk to everyone, the way they were talking to Libby, the way Lyle was talking to Chrissy, it feels like they are talking on Twitter. It's like, no, you're talking to a real person. The way that the way that they talk about this is the same way you see people talking about conspiracy theories on Twitter. Like, no, this is what I believe. This is right. You're wrong. You're stupid. You're a liar.
It's just
This
like,
never
it's
happened
my
to you.
family. And she tries to kind of humanize herself again with language. Oh, you mean my family. Oh, I'm not the youngest sibling. I'm the only remaining sibling. Yeah, it's like just, hey, reminder that this is real life. This is my life. You're right, though. There is this, the obsession supersedes sort of compassion or empathy. And it's interesting because it's like, this wouldn't be harmful if it didn't involve people. And I think, like, I always think, and I champion those on the spectrum, those obsessions provide that purpose. And it's, as a whole, really safe. My brother's on the spectrum. He loves video games. He loves Formula One. He can tell you every stat for everything. When he plays video games, he will test every single combination of a vehicle to drive the fastest. But when it comes to people and real life, to have that obsession where you're exactly right, having a person and their experiences not have like an incapability of kind of seeing the emotional part of it and the impact that words can have to real people, because the obsession is like sort of like the most important part with this, which is probably why out of all the characters, Lyle didn't bother me as much as Deandra did.
Well, I mean, Deandra is trash for a totally different reason, though.
Deandra's a pick-me girl.
Yeah.
And it's so funny
I think she's even beyond a pick-me girl.
She is. She's a destructive pick-me girl with narcissistic tendencies, which is and is manipulative. Some of the things that she does it was funny to hear it, where it's like that moment where Ben goes, she will basically chastise me. She will prod and poke, and she will antagonize me and bait me. And that when I react, that is the version of me that she likes the most. And it's not because she likes him being angry. It's like she likes the fact that she can control him and push him to show a certain emotion. And she is completely controlling and manipulative of him. She's also debilitating him. She is minimizing him. Hey, Jcast, thanks for the sip. And there's a lot of power in that. And I speak a lot about my high school because I went to a private all-girls school. And I would rather be punched in the face than go through some of these. That's hydration enough, Tim, thank you. Then go through some of the verbal onslaughts that I faced. Women can absolutely weaponize words, and a level of, and that's not, sorry, not women. It is a feminine trait because, you know, men react bash. Women, it's like, I'm going to use this and I'm going to be incredibly powerful with it. But I also think that because she's so, and you know, No one's just a dick or awful for the sake of being awful. There is a reason behind it. And with Deandra, we're skipping and jumping all over the place. That's because I don't have a rundown. Deandra has been so neglected by her parents. She doesn't feel like, I don't think that her parents love her because they just opt out of her life. They've left her to her own defenses. I mean, she's got all this money and they think that money equals love and that money shows them that, she's all good, but they're not parenting her and they're not showing her love. They're not demonstrating that love. They're not, holding her. They're not supporting her. They're gone. And so she's seeking any kind of validation and she's desperate for love, but she also needs to be in control as well. Kate, talk all the time. This is like the thing. It's open mic night here at Geek Bomb Book Chat. We literally are putting the chat in book chat. So if you, instead of commenting, if you want to interject, I will never, unless I'm on unless I'm using and gesticulating a lot. That usually means I'm on a big thing. Feel free to just unmute and be like, I want to add, or on that, like totally.
Yes.
Everyone gonna know. Yeah, go.
Speaking of that, while I was reading the book, I actually had difficulty reading this book. Not the words itself. I mean emotionally.
I agree with you.
Because
I can wake up and be like, life's great. All right, let's walk the dog and listen to the book. Ugh. And
exactly.
I feel like instantly depressed. Yeah.
So what I did was, I know this, but I took breaks and I watched She-Hulk because that show is so delightful.
Yes.
Like I would read the book, I would like read up. I'd get up in the morning, I would do my reading, and I'd be like, oh great, I feel terrible. And then I would be like, I gotta watch an episode of She-Hulk, and I'd be like, oh great, now I can go to work. And then I'm just like, oh wait, I don't have work.
So Jimmy, you're a very, very empathetic person. So whatever someone's mood is, whatever, it's a very empathetic thing that if something's meek and devastating, you feel that and wear it. And I'm exactly the same a lot of the time with that. The reason why I read multiple books is literally to bounce my mood. Because if I was just reading this, that would be hard. So I'm bouncing back between this Dungeon Crawler Carl series that I'm obsessed with, and it's a lot of fun, and it's just sort of like empty the brain, laugh out loud. But I hear you on that. So I guess my follow-up question for you, Jimmy, is even though the book's well written and the subject matter, the subject matter is quite tough, do you rate a book on enjoyment or how well the book is written?
I am strictly an emotional person when it comes to books. I don't care about the spelling, as you can clearly tell by my multiple chat posts where I miss words or whatever.
Right, so it's just purely how it makes you feel. I think I'm majority how it makes me feel. So if there's a book that just ripped me in two, or it's like negatively affected me, or it's shocking, yeah, I'm like, hey, I didn't enjoy reading that. That wasn't my cup of tea. Therefore, it doesn't get a higher rating. But Kate, you're saying that I love dark, depressive shit. What do you think that is? What is it about? Is it like it's kind of nice to be reminded that things could be worse, and it puts into perspective?
I don't know if it's that. I mean, I've always been kind of like just gothy and into horror and stuff, so I guess I just always like that stuff. I don't know. I kind of like going through something that makes me feel like I got beaten with a sack of oranges at the end of it. Like, I like that feeling.
I'm going to give you the biggest hug when we meet. I'm going to give you a big old hug.
I don't want to examine too much why. I think it probably do have some sadomasochistic tendencies that it kind of like,
wear it. It's you, and it makes it makes you uniquely and beautifully you. I don't think that that's a bad thing at all. Which is why books like this exist, because there is something for everyone. I'm still gonna give you a hug, though. I'm a hugger. How many people in this chat's had a hug from me? 1, 2.
I'll allow you to hug me, Maude. I'm not much of a hugger, but I'll allow
I can
you
see
to.
how it's gonna go down. You'll be like, fine. You done?
Yeah, once you get the actor hug, you'll stay forever. Don't worry.
Yay! I don't know. I think I'm a hugger because my mum's a hugger, and you guys have heard my mum. We got a poll happening. Do you rate a book by emotion or writing? I'm gonna vote emotion. I feel bad for authors because it's like, that was a great book. Like 1984. Holy shit, did you make me think? This is so bleak. I hated every second of it. Really well done though. Just reading some of the other comments. I want to touch on all of these. Thierry talking about Deandra says she's a teenage girl that understands the power that she has over boys and how to weaponize it. I feel like in high school, everyone could name that one girl that learnt that it's a superpower. But like all superpowers, with great power comes great responsibility. And there has to be a responsibility with that. Although, if there isn't a willing party that will just, go gaga over it, if the superpower doesn't work, then it has no power. So it's also, the blame's not solely on the woman. It's easy to sort of weaponize sexuality because it's such an easy fucking bait for some people. But there is a power and responsibility. And there was a girl in my school, she wore a push-up bra one day and that was it. That was it. The guys were done. And I'm like, I don't think she's the nice person. They're like, irrelevant. Irrelevant, she has cleavage. And I was like, wow. That's literally all it takes. Jim's laughing at that. Do you have anything to say? Is what it is. Cash22 says Deandra has no consequences, so she thinks she can get away with anything. There is really, like it's talking about it earlier, there is a very fine line between discipline. Discipline is a very, very necessary part of growing up. If you do something to hurt someone, if you do not listen to sort of like a boundary, if you aren't following the rules that are in place, there are consequences. And I think learning from a young age that when you overstep or when you hurt, that there is a consequence, that is a big thing. And you're right, when that is exempt, when that doesn't exist, the result is something like Deandra, who thinks she can get away with everything and anything and doesn't understand boundaries or limits or accountability. Yeah. And then she'll just buy things to make up for it. I bought you a shirt. Vaden says Trey is also awful. He claims to kill cows for kicks or for Satan. I mean, Satan, you can put it, when we were talking about having that purpose that brings people together, you can literally replace what that topic is with anything. We have a book club. We are all brought together because we read books and we talk about them, and that connects us as a community and it brings purpose into our lives, and we feel more fulfilled having connected over books and pages and words and characters, and we join a couple of times a month to discuss it. So we've already discussed in this book a different version of that. Instead of talking about a book, it's serial killers. With Trey and with Ben, it becomes Satanism. So it's like, what is my identity? What makes me feel fulfilled? What gives me a sense of power and purpose? And it's just like, my fucking brain does this all the time. You can't, how do you chastise one without and accept another? And I think it comes down to, is it hurting anyone or anything? Yeah.
As long as we don't start a cult, I'll be fine.
Duly noted with you, Jimmy. Duly noted with you. I joke about it with the rest of the community, but I understand and recognize your boundary on that subject big time. Just I hope you know that. Tim, were you saying something?
Yeah, I think Trey's a poser. I don't think he really believes any of that garbage, but I think Ben is just innocent enough that Trey can use it to his advantage, and that's what he's doing.
So let's look at Ben. Ben has 3 sisters, a mother, no father figure. He is desperate for someone to step up and teach him sort of like how to be a man.
Exactly.
That lack of a male figure in his life, and like so much power to single mums that actually are able to develop a sense of like providing masculine energy. I never want to ever say something is exclusively a man thing, something is exclusively a woman's thing. I joke that I have two dads sometimes because my mum can display masculine qualities. So it's like, it's just what we divide into masculine. And the fact that he's like, my mum taught me how to shoot. My mum's got a really, really great shot. My mum took me hunting. She's actually really good at it. I just wish my dad could actually step up and be a dad for me. And I think that something that a lot of teenage boys struggle with is a sense of communication and having permission to express emotion. And tell me if I'm wrong. There's quite a few guys in the chat. It is more acceptable to suppress those emotions, to just figure it out, to not have emotions sort of disrupt your day-to-day. And if you're feeling upset, you just figure it out and you get over it really quickly. You move on.
Oh, of course. I would say that growing up as a child, my mom wasn't really around that much, because of her passing. But I remember, like always consulting my sisters because, they were the next best thing. And, because my father was rarely around. And, when he wanted to do something, I just assumed that, like you said, you just bottle it up and then, accept it and whatnot.
Mm-hmm.
But, through conversations with my sister in therapy, I realized that you can embrace both, as you said, masculine and female energies, or feminine energies, if you would say.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, and I feel like that I've bettered myself over time because, like it's leaps and bounds in my opinion, with my point of view,
Okay. Thank you for sharing that. I appreciate it.
Yeah, true.
There you go.
Yeah, I bottled up a lot of stuff, like emotions, and at one point during work, I started crying for no reason at all. So my boss told me after 10 minutes of crying to go back home. And afterwards, I said, yeah, it's not good to bottle my emotions. And now I cry when I watch a Pixar movie.
I love a good cry like that. Thierry, we have a very, very similar story. I remember I went to work. I started crying. They put me in a room that was 4 walls of glass. So I'm in the office sobbing. They called it the fishbowl. And they're like, go into that room while you cry. The whole office could see me cry. And it was, I know, Tim's just like, what? And I'm like, I know. So this is my radio year. And this is the reason why I lasted 1 year. And the reason why I started crying wasn't the worst thing. I was not only doing a nightly radio show, but I was doing a weekly television show. That television show filmed on the Gold Coast in Australia at a theme park. So to get there, I would have to get up at 4 a.m. to catch an early morning flight to be on set at 7 for makeup, to start recording at 8 to be done by 12. Then we had lunch and then started going into the meetings to plan that night's show, which we would do until 10, 11 o'clock at night. I slept, I got an early morning flight back again to Sydney. Now there was a 15-degree difference between the Gold Coast and Sydney, and I didn't pack closed-toed shoes. And so when I'd landed from the airport, I was wiped. Like I was doing sort of like 18, 20-hour days. It was like a lot. It was a lot. And so I was on my way home when I got a phone call. And I think it was like 10 a.m. Usually I don't go into work until 1 o'clock in the afternoon. And I finish at 12 that night. I got a call saying, we've just got this interview with a band that you've interviewed 5-10 times before because they're an Australian band, but we need you to come to the office right now. And I was like, I'm actually on my way home. Can I just come in and pick up some like shoes, like Ugg boots or, something to keep my feet warm? And they said, absolutely not. Come straight away. And I just remember being like, that sucks. And I got into the office and I was like, and I just started crying. I sobbed in the bathrooms and then I just kept sobbing. I couldn't stop. And instead of Thierry then being like, we have to send you home, my boss said, we legally have to give you counseling sessions. I got 3 of them, which was great because I cried for like 3 hours. And they're like, pull it together. You have a show to do. And I was like, my toes are really cold. But that's the thing, like and you feel so much shame because you're having this disproportionate reaction to what the problem is. But it's not that singular problem. It's all the other stuff from underneath that you've been suppressing and bottling because you weren't sort of like processing those emotions. And so when it gets to a point where it erupts, it goes real deep. And then you're sitting here in your shame being like, well, I'm the chick that has cold toes, and when my feet are cold, then, you know, I cry. And it's not that at all. But I had counseling session, and we found out quite quickly that every single issue I was facing had to do with that job. And the counselor was like, what would life look like if you quit your job? And I was like, it would be so good. And so they're like, great. So you actually don't need counseling. You just don't need to do that job. And so I went back into work the next day, and they're like, well, we got you all this counseling. What was wrong? And I was like, oh, I quit. And they're like, no, that's not what's supposed to happen. I was like, consider this my fucking notice. Anyway, Catch-22 saying, burnout is a bitch. Kate saying that sounds horrible. It's not a sympathy thing. It's just like a, when they just take. And you're there going, oh, I actually think I have nothing left to give. Anyway, that is usually the coping mechanism for what like a masculine trait is, which is do not feel each thing, suppress it until you blow. And that's not a healthy thing either, because then you're the person that cries because your toes are cold, and you're just like, well, no, there is a list of things. Thierry says, I once punched a hole in a drywall out of pure frustration. Catch-22 said, that's how I broke my hand. Which hand, Tim? Right-handed. I kicked a tree once and burst a blood vessel in my foot. There you go. Michelle says, man, I was very lucky to have a great mentor during my several panic attacks at a job where we were both overworked and it was a toxic environment. Michelle, you are so lucky. So many people are not equipped and do not know how to handle panic attacks. As I didn't know what a panic attack was well into my adult years, where I remember feeling so overwhelmed and it was getting worse and worse. And I asked to take I think nowadays you can take like a mental health day. And I was like, I am not okay. I need to take a mental health day. And they went, no, go back to your desk. Sit back down. No, you can't do that. And I was like, where I wish we were like, hey, talk me through what's happening. Try and help catch a breath, or try and help diffuse this brain avalanche that is happening, which is essentially what a panic attack feels like for me. It is just like it snowballs and it just starts imploding. And funnily enough, it was my mother who was the best person to ever help me with a panic attack. I think I've had, on one hand, how many panic attacks I've had. Very, very rare. And like the 2 times that I had it, I didn't even know what it was. I was like, wow, I just really couldn't catch my breath for a while there. Woohoo! No, it was a panic attack. And I remember one time calling my mum and I couldn't breathe and I was freaking out. And she was so great. She goes, make a cup of tea. Oh, I don't want a cup of... Yes, you do. Come on. What tea do you want? Maybe what have you got? And I started listing out the teas. She was like, great, chamomile. Let's do that. What's the first step to make a cup of tea? I need a mug. Great. What's next? In the tea bag. And then I put the hot water. So she asked me to basically list out the steps of making a cup of tea. And that is one of the ways to diffuse a panic attack. Another example is, can you name me 5 green things in the room, or name me 10 items that you first see? So it's just a way to unravel that giant avalanche and just provide a little bit of structure so the brain can just take a beat for a second. Now, my mom knew that because she's a registered psychologist. So many people just go, they make it about them. What the fuck are you doing? Why are you being weird? And that shame exacerbates the panic attack. Go figure, huh?
Very true. I was having a conversation at TwitchCon. This is the first time I ever gone to TwitchCon back in 2016. And I was having a conversation with a friend. And in the middle of the conversation, I told my friend, I'm having a panic attack. And they said, well, I don't know what to do. So I said, just don't look at me because I feel extremely self-conscious,
Yes.
you know, like,
Mhm.
and so I lost my ability to speak, and I literally collapsed on the floor, and I was like, you know, like trying to gain my breath, and she was, her and her husband were very comforting, and they were like, oh, don't worry, this will pass, you know, like whatnot, and you know, she's just basically talking me through it. You know, she wasn't asking me to like count or anything or spot anything, but I did learn that that's very helpful for sure. My brother used to say that if you're good with baseball, you could do baseball stats.
Yeah.
And I was like, I used to just go through Pokemon. I know that sounds weird, but that's what I did.
And I think it's like, you know, it's hard to kind of preempt to the people that you care about. On the chance that I might have one, this is a great way to go about it. So I think like having a default there. Play the board. You say that we've got these types of grounding techniques listed around a recovery room in the local high school because it's become a common problem. What are some of those? I would love to learn more sort of like generic grounding techniques if you've got them.
I wish I had taken a picture because I got a tour of the room recently, but it had things like the find 6 green objects, touch 4 things that are furry. It had all those kinds of things.
That's great. We should do a book club one. What are your
It had
5 favorite? What is the best book you've ever read? What's the last book you read? What's on your TBR? You really have to think. Yeah.
They have puzzles out, so you can really focus on finding where this one piece goes, or it has instructions like just sort out the blue pieces. All these different techniques. It's got a doodle on the wall that you can go up and just scribble into the doodle. So you are making art, but you also don't have to really think about what you want to draw. It's already up there and you color it in.
That's good. I like, and it's like catering for like a left brain, right brain, you know, like all sorts. Also, it's very worth noting that panic attacks come in different shapes and sizes. Lisa and Michelle uncontrollably cry. It's just like this rush of sort of like sobbing that, again, there's this shame around it where you're not supposed to cry, like pull yourself together. And because you can't, that then perpetuates it and makes it even worse and worse. Mine, I cannot breathe. I can't catch my breath. And so it sounds like a lot of heaving, which is not fun, but it's just, it's one of those ones. And that is fucking scary when it happens. Because all you want to do is be able to breathe, but there's a constriction happening in the throat. Hyper restlessness sucks. Do you get restless legs at all, Tim?
Sometimes, like I don't get panic attacks very often. I hesitate to call them panic attacks. So they're more like anxiety attacks, where
I would love
like
to learn
my
the
heart.
difference. What is the difference between
well,
those?
and I don't know, but like my heart will start pounding, and I'll just be restless. Like I'll be pacing back and forth, but I can't focus on any one thing. So I'll just be like, you know, I'll be doing this kind of stuff with my hands and like just walking back and forth, and you know, I'll turn music up and then I'll turn it back down, and then it's a disaster. But
yes,
I get it. Usually it passes after a while. Like I'll just tire myself out, and then it's kind of I just kind of exist for a minute. But
both versions are seeking some sort of stability, though. Grounding. Yeah, really interesting.
Yeah, it comes from not being able to turn my brain off, and it just running wild, like on some kind of weird thought path.
A lot of people joke about that. You see the tweet where it's like, you know, everyone else goes to bed at a reasonable time. Me at 4 a.m. I'm going over every single worst case scenario, or every single time I made an ass out of myself or was embarrassed, and I'm just like, just reliving them all.
Yeah, been there, done that.
Yeah.
Months ago.
I am very relieved that I'm not. Sometimes I'll be like reflect on it and be like, well, maybe I could have done that better. But
believe it or not, I had one of those like 3 days before I joined the book chat for the first episode of.
Yours was Martian, wasn't it? The first one?
No, it was the other Andy Weir book that I can't remember anymore.
We made you do not Ready Player One, Project Hail Mary.
Yes, Project Hail Mary, when I read the whole book. But I had
Part
like an
2.
anxiety attack like 2 days before I tuned into the first episode and then decided to read the book. So
In like 40 hours.
kudos to Book Club for digging me out of that.
I use books as an escape, which is why I read all the time. Play the board. Your panic represents as anger. That is beautiful of you to be vulnerable and share that, but I am the same. My body knows that it is more comfortable and it protects me more to display anger than pain. It is more bearable to be anger than to feel pain, than to have anger. Yes. So I totally get you with that. Terrible in relationships during a fight. But it is a coping mechanism. It is a shield. It's a survival technique that we have. So I hear you on that. Vaden says, from looking it up, it seems like anxiety attacks are generally considered a kind of panic attack as well. I'm going to edit you on the fly. Tass says, my panic attacks, my Apple Watch heart tracker hits over 200 beats. I'm violently shaking. My anxiety attacks are me semi-hyperventilating where my hands go pins and needles. Panic, I have to wait it out. Anxiety, I have to ground. So wait a second. Maybe mine are anxiety this whole time? Or is it flipped? Is anxiety when the heart, because Tim was saying anxiety was the heart going. My panic is hyperventilating. That's panic for me, I thought, not anxiety. Maybe they're switched, who knows?
I don't know, mine's a buildup. Like the anxiety starts in my brain and then I get restless. Yeah. It starts with my brain not being able to turn off and then I'm like, I have to do something to occupy my mind, and then I go absolutely kind of skits on doing whatever.
When you can't control the thoughts or the brain, it has a physical response.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I tell myself I need to focus, but then I can't.
No, and this is where it kind of perpetuates it all. It's a lack of control in that moment, which is so frightening. It's like I want to try and bring it back to the book somehow, where we're kind of talking about sort of who everyone is because of, I don't want to blame it on small town, but it's like, I also don't want to blame it on poverty. It's an interesting kind of, sometimes you dealt shitty cards in life. And I feel like with Ben, we don't know the full story yet, but it sounded like he just kind of opted out. There's a line in another book that I'm reading where it's like, when you can tell in the eyes when a person has given up and they're the most dangerous person because they no longer care about their actions and how they affect others. And I wonder if Ben, I mean, we don't know about the second half of the book. If you've read the entire book, please, we're only talking about the first half. But when the whole kind of like basis for Libby's mindset of, I was 7 years old, I think I was coerced into basically saying something that didn't happen, which put him into jail. Her understanding is he didn't appeal. If he was so innocent, he would have appealed. So my question is, how bad has Ben's life been where he truly thinks that this is what he deserves, even if he's innocent? Yeah, okay. Thierry says, being from a small town, if you don't fit in the school cliques, you're screwed. Tim is talking about the fact that there is an extra layer of, I guess, anti-privilege with poverty. This is an overshare. I went to a very private all-girls school that cost tens of thousands of dollars per year to attend. And my parents didn't have extreme amounts of money. And so every day I went to school, I was inundated with Deandras. It was a great example. a girl in my school, Amy, decided to crash on purpose her $75,000 BMW convertible because it wasn't brand new, and she felt slighted. So I could not fit in with my peers because I didn't have insane wealth. And so when I was at school, I spent a lot of energy trying to fit in, and I knew that I never could. And so I would go back home and resent my parents for putting me in an unwinnable situation. And I became the worst version of myself. And I remember my mum being like, this is temporary. This isn't real life. None of this shit matters. You don't ever have to see any of these girls again once you've left school. But when you realize that this is not the be all and end all, you will be like, oh my gosh, Mum, you're right. My dad had a little bit more empathy, which is why I have PB tattooed on my wrist, because he was like, yes, this is actual bullshit, and once you're out of school, none of this will matter. But in this slice of your current life, you truly believe that it does matter, and it is all consuming, and you don't feel like you can survive it. And so he was really helpful with just like trying to get through it, whereas my mum was just like waiting for me to come out the other side of it. I think I was 18 and a half. So I'd left school for 6 months when I turned to my mum and I was like, you were right. It was all bullshit. None of it mattered. To which she was like, told ya. But in those years of high school, I felt incredibly lonely and isolated and unsupported, I guess, by my family, hence the resentment. So even though I had a more upscale version of that, the notion of not being able to fit in, because I was trying to fit in with here, but I was only here, but we are talking about sort of like, you know, living in a trailer or not being able to make ends meet or needing shark loans. It is a sliding scale. I feel like the feelings do remain the same. The stakes are just a lot, you know, it scales as well. The stakes are a lot higher there. So I guess I said I couldn't relate to this, but maybe I can a little bit more than I thought. That's what half a glass of wine will do. People are sharing about their major panic attacks. I think it's very healthy to do so. I think it's great to normalize it. I think there is a lot of shame associated with panic attacks and anxiety attacks. So if we normalize it a little bit better and know that it doesn't define us and that we are handling it better every single time, fantastic. Kate says, I want to say that it's wild that they put Ben in jail because of the coerced testimony of a little girl. But that stuff happened during Satanic Panic, and it still happens. Not all cops, but if there is a short path of if we can coerce or slide one piece into this, then that's taken care of. Oh, the other path is we need to extrapolate the truth and we need to do a thorough investigation and we need to actually take all of these steps, and it's a longer path, which is more money and more costly, and I've got a full plate and I'm understaffed. What are they going to choose? They're going to destroy one person's life that they never really have to see again, and they can sweep it all under the rug and it's done and dealt with. So they don't have to make this effort or put in the work or spend the money on finding the truth. The more and more I'm online and on the internet, the more I recognize that it's never been about the truth. It's been about fitting things into the narrative that best suits.
My best friend's favorite phrase is perception is reality.
Yeah. And that is one of the saddest things I'll say today. And that got real bleak. But it's the truth. But the truth is irrelevant. It is literally I'm going to believe or I'm going to justify a means to an end where truth is somewhat irrelevant. Ugh, gross. Am I jaded? Yes. But have I been on this for far too long? Yes. See you, T-Bones. Thank you so much for stopping on by. This is getting a bit heavy, but it's a heavy subject matter. And you know what? We had light and fluffy with TJ Klune, and now we're getting literally into a dark place. Yay, the book. Thierry says, same thing with Stranger Things season 4 with Eddie. They were ready to hang him on the spot. Exactly. Truth was irrelevant. He knew that he was in a position where he didn't have a lot of money and he had somewhat of a reputation. It was easier for people to stick the blame on him than to seek out the truth. There you go. Eddie is Ben. Ben is Eddie. Great.
Yeah.
Great.
They talk about that a lot in the book, actually, about how the rumor mill starts on some subject. Like, they called like Patty a whore for no good reason. They insinuated like what's his name, Ben's a pedophile and all sorts of things. Like, and it's like as soon as one person gets on board, they start spreading it everywhere, and people just immediately believe. Yeah.
Outrage is contagious. And as soon as people find that there is power in that outrage and they gain some sort of clout where followers will come on board and support that notion, that's addictive to some people.
Yeah, especially for I think it makes more sense, especially with the small town stuff, because when everyone knows each other, your reputation becomes more important. So it's, if you don't have it, it gets destroyed, and people manipulate it, it's very dangerous.
Yes. Absolutely. And compassion goes out the window and outrage trumps. And I feel like maybe social media has made it a lot more obvious because it's bringing sort of like everyone together. But people wake up and choose outrage. And I don't know how every single day you can carry the weight of that outrage, but apparently it's contagious.
Yeah, it seems like it's a lot of us to do with just people wanting drama, especially when their lives are very mundane. They're just bored. So when they see something like that, they kind of drama, like some kind of like conflict, they latch onto it. It's exciting for them.
Absolutely. And it provides purpose, which is what we were talking about earlier.
Yeah.
Or they feel so bad about their life or their thing or what they've done that this provides the perfect sort of scapegoat or deflection where they get to feel better about themselves because they're being hung out to dry. There you go. Thierry says, with the age of the internet and social media, innocent before proven guilty has no leg to stand on. Yeah, it's how, if a cancellation occurs, or in the case with Ben, it is a very, very damaging accusation. The truth behind it is so irrelevant, and because it's so shocking, it's all people want to talk about, and it gains legs. Very, very interesting. Kate says, everyone in the small town is afraid and dumb. I mean, I hate to say that all small town people are dumb because that's not true, but they're usually more insular and don't have a lot of experience with people other than themselves, so it turns into an echo chamber. So the mob mentality gets strong. And there's a point with mob mentality because we've decided that, if there's a graph of truth and outrage, sort of like it does that, I guess. The more outrage there comes, the less truth is required to fuel it. I don't know. Just I'm so fearful of outrage. I think outrage is a plague. I think it's an infection. Personally. Feel other things before outrage.
I would agree with you on that, Maude, because as a stand-up comedian, right, you're always under those guys of being like, is this comedian going to say something that's offensive? And if he is going to offensive, we're ready to...
I'm going to drag and destroy. Yes.
Exactly. So...
And here you are being like, oh, I just wanted to try and test material. It didn't work. Great to know. Glad for the feedback. Won't use it again. No, it's done. You're done.
Exactly. But, people just like to jump on board, as you said.
I wonder is it an insecurity that's perpetuating that?
Well, I spoke to my doctor.
Right? Yeah.
And my doctor said that a lot of people, when they see someone that is a focal point, whoever it may be, is the focal point, they may possibly feel anger or sadness or whatever it may be, that they're not the focal point because they didn't
Jealousy.
have the gumption to
Stand
go
up
after
and
their
do what you
dreams
did.
or
Yes.
do what they want to do. So they're taking it out on you, like you said earlier, through anger.
Yeah.
You know, Theory said it. And, you know, like I said, it's all about navigating correctly. Now, I've never, you know, started an argument with someone. I usually just say one quick line and then move on, or I tell them to shut up, and then, you know. But for the most part, it's usually diffused by then. But I would assume at a higher level, like, for example, you know, like Will Smith or whatever, it's a many moving parts. But, you know, generally, I think it comes from, you know, selfishness, anger, you know, that type of place. That's my guess. And
I like
competition.
that. Yeah. You have to see what's stemming, what the behavior, where it stems from, and what the drive is to act in that particular way. I had to learn a really, really harsh lesson about pretty privilege, white privilege, a lot of things, because it's something that we learn through awareness. We only know our perspective. And so when we start learning others' perspective, we can understand our place in that in a way. And I remember talking to my therapist being like, I don't think this person likes me, or they're out to get me, or I'm not understanding sort of like where their anger is coming from. My therapist had to remind me, you are tall. That's a privilege. You are blonde, blue eyes. That's a privilege. And by default, things that I can't control, and I know that very much like the white man who has been on the top of the tent pole this entire time, is that sometimes the things that you don't have no control over provides a privilege that you may be unaware of. And that was something that in the last few years I really, really had to understand, because I'd be like, I don't even know what I've done. And it's like, sometimes you don't even have to do anything. And when you take that into consideration, it's just like, okay, I just need to be a little bit more respectful or cognizant, or throw caution to the wind, or just accept that this is what it's going to be like for me. Baden?
Yeah. I think you're definitely especially right about that. Like, there are times, especially if, like, even if you had no interaction with someone, if interaction with people who I think are look at you or act like you, or they think so, and they take their experiences from those previous times you've talked to the people or dealt with them, and they basically project it onto you. And even if you haven't done anything wrong necessarily, those people, their bad experiences can rub off and, you know, create a conflict there, even though you haven't necessarily done anything wrong.
Yeah. Catch22 says, still, it's a bit unfair to have to accept hate or whatever for simply existing. I get that. That. Yes. Oh, let me just finish this thought real quick though, Kate. It does definitely seem unfair, but it's like when you kind of relinquish that maybe in this instance you as an individual haven't done anything wrong, but whatever unfairness you're facing, it's likely not as bad as what they've had to deal with their entire lives. So it's not a comparison thing, but it's like a taste of, oh wow, that's what it feels like to have a prejudice just for existing, which is something that they faced all the time. And it's like it's a learning experience where it's like, oh, this doesn't feel good, and you're like, well, there it is, you know. But there are a lot of unfair things, which is like, I feel like we are talking about this exact book. We are stacking sort of like unfair things on unfair things. Some of them wrong place at wrong time. Others, the story and the narrative is more exciting than the truth. Like, how unfair is that? How unfair is, oh, I mean, maybe you're not a pedophile, but I've told everyone I've ever met, because wow, like, but there's a lot of unfair in a lot of different things. But yeah, just like the big thing I had to learn was, oh wow, I can really, you know, have anger or disdain against me when I've done nothing. And you're like, all right, am I going to get high and mighty and shitty because I'm finally feeling a taste of what they've been experiencing their entire life? And when I said they, it's a minority that has had sort of prejudice against them for existing. Is that we're getting a taste of our own medicine? I don't know. I mean, it's hard because at the same time, it's like us as an individual may not have done the thing, but it's, you know what it is? Fundamentally, pain. We are literally experiencing pain. We're experiencing other people's pain because of their suffering. And we are now experiencing pain from the awareness of suffering. It's a hard conversation to have. Sorry, guys. I'm like a wine deep as well. Michelle says, projection is such a driver in people's actions. And it's often not fair, but it's a part of our human experience. Michelle, let's bring it back to the book. Let's talk about projection a little bit more. I think projection is an amazing thing to bring up because when someone is angry at you and you're like, this doesn't make sense, you can literally go, oh, okay. Why is this thing the highlight or like the big part of it all? So Michelle, if you've got thoughts on that, I'd love to hear from you.
Sure. So like, I think of projection a lot as like, well, why does it happen? Right. Because you can go into like Twitter trolls and stuff and you go one layer deep and they're like, oh, I was just having a bad day often. But, you know, I think like projection is a way that we historically have made connections with other people. So it's like a risk that we are willing to take, or it's a signal that we need to be careful, right? It's like having prior information. So we take our experiences and we use it to make decisions about how we interact with people. And I think we see this a lot with Libby and how she interacts with people as an adult. And I think we see this a lot with Ben and how he interacts as a teen, because he feels so isolated, he feels so inept that he projects that ineptness on literally everyone he meets. He blames his mom for not being able to take care of the farm, her children, herself, all that stuff, him. And, you know, we get a couple chapters into his perspective and it comes from him, you know, being the man of the house, fair or unfair,
but feeling unequipped as that man because he's he's had no experience.
And he also doesn't take the initiative to be the man of the house other than having this job as a janitor. That's his contribution, but he feels resentful that he has to give half of his paycheck to his mom, you know. So like you know, and that all feeds into his worldview. And I think you see the same with Libby later in life, where she's projecting, you know, obviously the people at the Kill Club are awful, but, you know, she reacts violently to that because in her experience, when things are awful, that awfulness comes back to you.
Well said. And I started going through like a whole thought process about projection and what the equation of projection is. And I'm wondering if projection is pain and unawareness. If that's the combination. Projection is I am reacting, and this is personal for me because there is so much pain surrounding it, but I'm going to unleash it on you because I'm unaware of the impact it's having on me, the effect, or that this is a me problem and not a you problem.
I think it's kind of like our, like, maybe like our baseline, how we're feeling at any given time, because you can also project like being unhelpfully optimistic. You know what I mean? Like you can project happiness where there is none. You can project opportunity where there is none.
So I think then it is easier to make it an outward thing than to inwardly process it.
Yes. Yeah.
Oh, love this Psych 101 that's happening. A couple more questions with this. Wasn't sort of the blame on his mum having 4 kids coming from Deandra, though? I don't remember that.
That is definitely part of it. She mentions it, but I think, you know, before we get into his deep dive with that, he was already kind of a kid on his way to social isolation.
Yes. Thierry says Chrissy made up a lie, the lie, because Ben rejected and then ran away from her after she kissed him. So she's using the lie as a shield to deal with rejection, which is so interesting, like where she came. She's like, you know what? Stripping isn't even that bad. Stripping is amazing. It makes you feel good. Everyone's having a good time. And it's like, I guess with stripping, you cannot face rejection because people are coming there to see you. I don't know. That's interesting. Super, super interesting. Kate says, I've got a segue that I want to talk about with what we're talking about in the book. Go, Kate. If you can still remember it.
Ken. So we were talking kind of like about the outrage and the cancel culture and all that kind of stuff. And that was sort of happening, that mentality in the town. Like, talked about all the other farmers would just wait for like weakness in your armor that your farm was kind of failing, and they would like, there was that whole story about them leaping on where it's like, oh, well, his farm was failing, he should have known better, and all that kind of stuff. And the one farmer like ticks Patty in the store because, you know, the farm wasn't successful. And I think with that rumor about Ben, it was just the fuel they needed, because essentially, like, if you look at it through a modern social media lens, these are antis of, like, you know, everyone else. So it's like, oh, now I finally have something to destroy them, so I'll look better, you know what I mean? Because a lot of the time when someone gets canceled, it's not necessarily about anything they did. It's because they're somehow, quote-unquote, competition for the person starting the rumors, like, you know, preferred fave kind of thing. So the whole town,
They take pleasure from failure, from another's failure.
Well, it also like pushes other farmers down, right? Like, well, they're not as successful as I am, because the whole thing with all like the cancellation and that outrage is bullying. Because when you bully someone, even if you're on the low rung, you want to find someone who's lower than you so you can feel better about yourself.
Yes, agree.
These farmers just like, yes, we have this rumor about Ben. Let's destroy him because he's kind of an outcast already. Now we can feel so much better about ourselves. And the same thing was happening with Deandra, too. I mean, she liked having Ben as her boyfriend because you can tell just from her personality and the way she treats Trey and what we've seen so far. Like I said, he was like her hired goon, essentially. Mm-hmm. Like, he's just her follower. That it's like, yes, I have this guy who's like lower social class than me. He's like, you know, I can use sex to lure him in, and I can treat him like garbage. And it will make me feel better because I don't have any parents in my life. I can absolutely, like, control this guy and, like, treat him like dirt because he is dirt because he's poor and I'm rich. You know what I mean? So the whole town kind of had that sort of, like, they were all trolls.
I want to learn more about that. It's like this power in oppressing. They're finding power in the ability to oppress. Chris Truscorn says a great thing. It's tall poppy in reverse. So tall poppy is when someone grows too big, everyone else feels the need to cut them back down so they don't grow bigger or better than everyone else. In this instance, it's the person falling short, or if there's a rumor that kind of lessens someone, everyone stacks onto that to push them down so that they feel like they're growing and getting better. So where does the power come from? I guess, again, you look at the perspective that they have. When they say they're a failure, they're not doing it, they truly believe, or it's like, he's a pedophile, you know, in this instance. It's like washing your hands and making you feel better because you're perpetuating this truth or lie, it's irrelevant, this behavior that you want to dissociate yourself from. And we're seeing how damaging that is. This guy, Ben, would rather be in jail. He would rather be in jail.
I'm kind of going off of this necromancer's point. It feels like almost like a version of like prosperity gospel, where like people essentially, if you're doing bad in life or something's going wrong with you, it's like a judgment on your morals. Like if you're not doing, then it's if you're doing badly, then you're being punished essentially by God, or just in general, you're not looked well upon. Faith, you know, it's not your.
But they're weaponizing faith. You step one toe out of line, you do one thing wrong. Therefore, We are casting a very broad stroke over you as an entire person, and we are debunking your faith and how you practice and your morals. You are all bad because you are defined by this one thing that you do. So this is a problem that I have. I preach a lot. I maintain, for several reasons, being a woman on the internet, listening during Black Lives Matter, learning. The most powerful, not ally, the most powerful person that we as a society can have is someone willing to learn. They don't know everything. Maybe they fucked up. Maybe, they tried and got denied, whatever it is. But if someone is willing to learn, yay! I think they're our best asset as a society. I will use misogyny as a great example. I would get a lot of people being like, oh, just show us your tits. And every now and then I'll respond being like, do you think that's an appropriate thing to say to a stranger? And more often than not, their response would be either, oh my God, I didn't think you'd see that. Or, oh wow, you're a person. Maybe that's not the best thing to say. What did I do wrong? And if they're willing to actually listen and learn, even though it's a slog for me to have to teach or to have to kind of like, hey, well, women are people. That's not really how this goes. You aren't entitled to these sorts of things. Let's try to build stable relationships with women and let's try to do respect. Try that on for size. Even though every individual time you have to teach, it's exhausting. And I learned that from Black Lives Matter with me as a Black person. I'm fucking over having to teach a white person about racism. It's not my job to do that, and I'm exhausted. I was like, I don't know how to relate to that, but I can relate to being a woman having to teach someone about misogyny and sexualization and objectification. And it's exhausting. But for me, I'm like, if I can right one person's wrong and I can have that conversation, and if they're willing to actually learn because they give a shit, then I get to protect all the other people that they may have gone on to hurt from that one interaction. And that's a win for me. If we apply shame to someone willing to learn, hey, I feel like I've upset someone. I feel like I've said something wrong. We've had this in our community before. Hey, I feel like I've upset Maude and I'm not entirely sure what I've done, but I know that I've done something wrong. I just don't know. Can someone please help me understand what it is? That is the best kind of person because they are willing to learn. If we then drench that person in shame, how did you not know? You are so grossly misunderstood. It is not my job to teach you. You can get fucked. You should already know this. What lesson do they actually learn? Not to try and be better, to try and get better, to try and, gather information to become a better person. They learn that if you try or if you ask for help, you are denied and you are shamed and you are a lesser of a person. So usually the answer for that is, well, fuck you and fuck this lesson that I was trying to learn. Not only will I continue this behavior, but it is now my purpose because I've been shamed for trying to learn otherwise. And I think that's what we learn from in this book as well. There is a huge amount of shame that is placed on people. Ben is turning to Satanism to try and have this shield of not knowing, not being good enough, not having enough money. I'm not sure what I did wrong. All of a sudden, this chick kissed me and I realized it was wrong, so I stepped away and now I'm a pedophile. And that amount of shame and not wanting to know the truth has gone, well, I'm going to kill cows because my Satan worship requires it. And it's such a deflection and becomes a shield for the pain he's likely feeling. So this is a big part of the book, of society. I just feel that shame is never the answer. I feel like the best way for everyone to get through a situation, hey, you kind of fucked up, or this isn't the best step forward, or I'm not super a fan of that. And I'm only explaining the example of sort of how I've gone through life and my experience. But if you're like, screw you for doing that, you're awful, you're nasty, you're a perv, how does that help anything? But if you just take a second, and I will thank my brother who is on the spectrum, who doesn't understand a lot of human emotion, who doesn't understand what is right, what is okay, what is socially acceptable. I have so much time and grace for that, because I'm like, how dare I assume that everyone can understand this straight away? And if we all take a little bit more grace and have a little bit more threshold to be able to teach or to just recognize, hey, this is what it was. This is why it didn't sit well. This is how to get around it. This is the solution to it. Good luck. Try again. You got this. That's the cure to every problem. But when outrage is the default, it is this whole, how dare you even do that? You want to know how to fix it? Screw you. You already did it. You're done. Doesn't help. Anyway. Vaden says, being willing to ask in good faith and accept that you are wrong is a great trait. To ask in good faith is to be vulnerable. We as a society need to hold a little bit more grace into allowing room for that person to admit that they were wrong. And we can't do that with shame. Anyway. Black Belt says, another great read was Caste by Isabel Wilkerson. It's about the unspoken caste system in America and how that has affected the divisions in today's society. I would love to read that, Black Belt. I think that's amazing. As someone who's not American, and some of us aren't here, we've got Canadians, and an Australian. It was really, really interesting to come into America and be like, wow, I'm feeling a lot of pain. Why? What is this about? Where is it coming from? And I have said, and again, this is an outsider's perspective, I have said that America is built on a fractured foundation. And I don't know if I could westernize or like modernize or provide context for what that feels like. It's the princess and the pea, with the pea being under so many different layers, but you can still feel it. It still exists. It is always there. And this isn't that she's uncomfortable and she needs a better night rest. This is, even if you try to bury it and even if you stack on it, it doesn't go away. I'm getting deep again. Sorry, everyone. Kate says, about the book again. I loved the detail that Libby stole. Not only was it a traumatization from her poverty as a child and not having a lot of belongings, but she's also an orphan who's been shunted around. So she never had much that belonged to her. So she takes. It's all piddly crap that she's stealing, but it's her small way of taking back her power. Kate, let's chat about that. Libby stealing being an adverse reaction from her childhood.
I'm now full of toast.
Did you say, and now I'm full of toast?
Literally chewing toast. Sorry.
What is it?
He has a mouthful of toast.
Oh, I thought you said Libby. And
You're the waitress that asks, how is everything, right after you take the first bite.
I am. And I'm like, answer me right now. I want my 20% tip.
Yeah, she's stealing salt shakers and ketchup packages and stuff like that. So it's not
the moisturizers, yes.
She is stealing people's jewelry sometimes when she goes to their houses. But when someone is really poor, you'll see a lot of, if you have friends who have been very poor grow up, you see them have issues with hoarding food and it's like, oh, we can't throw that out, might be able to use it because they had to ration everything as a child. So even if they're financially comfortable, they still do it because it was ingrained in them. Her taking those things, and even she says in brackets, you should never pay for tea packets, or you should never pay for all the things that she was taking that were very small things. And at the same time, when you no longer have a home, you no longer have a family. She was living with her Aunt Diane, but
in a trailer with a dog that she didn't like.
It wasn't her home. Diane took her in and was looking after her, but it wasn't the same. She was taken out of her home. She didn't have that anymore. So when she goes into someone else's house, it's just I want to take a piece of this feeling that is gone. This feeling of this person's in their home, their things, and comfort, and, you know, I don't have that. It's stolen from me. I'm going to steal this from you.
I'm going to take it back. I've been denied. I haven't had. Yes, absolutely. I totally get that. And Lara's like, you know, you're taking the salt and pepper. And she's like, I could play dumb. Oh, am I? Oh. Or I could be like, yep, I need them. And it's interesting that Libby has that attitude, but also Libby's mother had that attitude with Ben. She went into his room and noticed a lot of things that were pocket-sized were in the house that she'd never bought him. And she was split. She was like, do I ridicule him or teach him that stealing is bad and, you know, put into practice what is right and what is wrong? Or do I let him fucking have it because he hasn't got much? And this is something that he wants for him. And how do I fault that? Play the Board says she's stealing mementos and heirlooms to have other people's better memories. Play the Board. That's so interesting. Let's talk more about that. She's rewriting her past by building new memories with objects. Because
She
they
talks
aren't
about-
her. Yes.
She talks about a flask she has taken that belonged, I think, to somebody's great uncle, but I might be wrong in the details there. But she comes right out and says her own history is horrible. She's going to take these objects that are part of other people's family history because it's better family history to have.
Rebuilding memories through different objects. Like, not fantastic, but like fascinating. And I think, Kate, that's what you're kind of saying with like learning the human psyche, repercussions of deep trauma, what makes someone who they are, whether it's, we don't really learn about the brains of the brilliant or like, that's not true, we do. But like, you know, the good people. But it is fascinating to learn how and why it all went wrong. But I think using and stealing objects when you don't have a home, when you don't have a family anymore, and taking things to build again. Yeah, really interesting. Vaden, you've unmuted.
Oh no, I just normally unmute, but I'll turn on myself.
Cash 22. So I can dive into Ben for a minute. Go for it. You said you related to Ben the most, big time.
Yeah. So
are you a redhead?
We were talking about. No, I'm not. I'm not. I'm a brunette. No, it's just I kind of relate to Ben because I grew up not wealthy as a kid, and so I kind of get what it's like to be 15 and not have as much money as your peers in school, and have, you know, because I went to in a school district that everybody made more money than what my family made. And I was, in a way, I was Ben in that he entertained thoughts of, you know, everything sucks.
Yeah. He found solace in just knowing that suicide was an option.
Yeah.
Not acting out on it, but just knowing that there could be an out from the pain.
Right. And then he internalized the lyrics to metal songs. Mm-hmm. You know, I grew up, you know, I was a teenager in the 90s, and we had, you know, bands like Korn and Limp Bizkit. And, you know, one of my favorite songs when I was 17 years old was No Place to Hide by Korn. You know, and it was, I have no place to hide, I have no place to run that I like, and things like that. So, like, in a way, like, I was Ben in that sense. And then, you know, I was thinking about, he went to, you know, he had his job and he left, and he didn't want to go home because home sucks. And he didn't want to just go straight to Deandra's because he didn't want to sit around and wait for her outside in the cold for an hour.
So he went, and he doesn't make her feel better about himself.
Right.
Even because, like, there was that really telling moment where he's like, I've had sex 22 times. This should be good. This is what men covet. This is the reason for being a man. Sex is supposed to be the answer. I feel worse every single time.
Yeah. So, but I was just thinking about, he went to, for lack of a better term, he went to the clubhouse thing.
Yes.
The barn or whatever. Yeah. And, you know, there were the kids hanging out and they were all older, but they were all hanging out, smoking weed, drinking, playing music, whatever. And it really is the first time, and maybe I'm wrong, but it's kind of the first time that Satanism is mentioned. And it's not Trey. It's Ben projecting that Satanism on Trey, saying, oh, I got in a fight with Trey. And he goes, when you do what we do, that happens. You know, when you worship Satan, you have to. And, you know, the other kids were questioning him on it, and he just kept digging that lie deeper because he was so desperate to be accepted.
What was his armor?
Yeah, he was so desperate to be accepted that he was willing to go that deep into it. And I've been there. Like, I was that kid where I would say things that weren't necessarily completely true, you know?
But intimidation,
you know, half-truths and things just because you want to fit in.
Right? Do you
yeah,
feel
or
that?
just you desire to fit in. And so I think it's interesting to me because then when Trey shows up, they start talking about it, and Trey just kind of looks at Ben and says, huh. And then he's giving him a ride to DeAndre's. He says, you better be prepared to back that shit up.
Yeah, I see your lie, so I'm going to hold it against you.
Yeah, he didn't say anything about it at the time, but he called Ben to the carpet privately. And it was kind of interesting to me. And
but that's Trey's hold over Ben. That's a controlling maneuver.
And I have a theory, and I'm waiting for the second half of the book to find out if I'm right.
Ooh. I do think we've got some theories, actually, and I wouldn't mind talking about what we think is going to happen, who done it. It's not so about it being a mystery. This is not an Agatha Christie at all. This is like an unveiling. We've got the time jumps. I kind of wanted to talk about what we thought about the then present day and the past day. But Black Belt says Ben and Libby both stealing things is another clue for me and my theory. I think Ben did kill his family and Libby was involved somehow, but has either trauma blocked her involvement out or Libby's an unreliable narrator. There's something about Libby that I just don't trust, and I think that Ben and Libby were a lot closer than she's letting on. We have to understand and remember that Libby was 7. 7. 7. That's very young. I don't think Ben did it. I think, or he was exactly what Tim's theory is, coerced. Ben started talking the talk, and he had to start walking the walk, and that walk could have been Deandra, Trey, the two people that minimize and belittle him and reduce him the most, calling him out on his shield of being a satanist, yep, and ask him to follow through. Tass, who read the book, says that is so interesting. It would explain why his reaction seeing Libby was so forgiving. Good point, Tass. He was also okay taking the full blame to keep Libby free. We are seeing so many different facets of trauma in this book, which again is easy for some, difficult for others. But speaking from experience, trauma can literally remove memories from the brain to protect, to keep someone safe. There can be days, moments, weeks, months gone where when you start poking, prodding, or providing the data or evidence that this thing did exist, maybe the brain will allow you to remember. But the brain is...
I've actually experienced that.
Yeah. The brain is so freakishly strong. They can be like, no, it didn't happen. Control-Alt-Delete.
Of course. I was having a conversation with my siblings not too long ago, and we were talking about our childhood, and my brother was like, hey, do you remember this thing? And my sister was like, yeah, I remember that thing. And like, Jimmy, do you remember it? And I was like, nope.
Not a bit of it.
I have no idea what you're talking about. I don't even remember these things. But going back to the theory about this book, like, even though it does tie in, like, if he's not remembering something, you know, maybe there could be some third party that, you know, because a lot of times I've noticed, like, in like murder mystery kind of things, like Murder on the Nile and Knives Out and all this other stuff, it's usually like someone that's like unexpected, or they're taking them away from it, you know. So who knows? Maybe, like you said before, Libby is an unreliable narrator, and it's possible that she either witnessed the murderer themselves, who will be appearing, or, like you said earlier, it's possible that she did it even though she was 7 years old.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think, as we explore all forms of trauma, I think that is a really viable sort of part of trauma that could be a part of this book. We got some theories forming though, Lisa.
Yes.
22. Thierry, you got a theory?
Well, since this is our
Thierry, do you have a
third,
theory?
yeah, since it's our third Gillian Flynn book, can I remember that she's good at putting like breadcrumbs everywhere?
Yes.
When Libby goes to the Kill Club, Gillian Flynn wrote a lot about that Angel of Death serial killer that's been active for a couple of decennies. And since the farm is going badly financially, maybe that's a clue of who done it.
I like that you're picking up everything that's being put down.
Well, it's also fresh in my memory because I started the book today.
Yeah. That's good. Lisa, you're saying that you've got the same theory as Catch-22. What's the theory?
You want me to out it?
Yeah.
Go for it, Lisa.
Well, when he was saying how Trey had said to him, like, you better be prepared to back that up, my first thought was, oh, Trey did this, or Trey forced him to do it.
Interesting.
Like, so my thought is maybe he made him go, they did it. Libby, in one of her memories, talked about how she heard Ben say, why did you make me do this? And you think he'd be talking to the mom, but maybe he was talking to Trey.
Or
and
Deandra.
Maybe Deandra. Maybe she was part of it too.
Yes, there it is. Because it was interesting when they were trying to frame Runner, the father, the shitty deadbeat father. You want it to be him because it's like, yes, he's not a good person. It would make sense. But then Libby was trying to place that voice memory on Runner, and it didn't really fit. But it also didn't really fit Ben. So we're trying to find a face to the voice. That's really interesting. Okay. Black Belt says, but that's also why I think it was Ben. We're following Libby as she digs deeper and comes to accept that Ben didn't do it. But I think the twist will be that Ben actually, he did do it. Cash22 says, I think he was there, Ben, and saw it all, but believed he was powerless to stop it. Therefore, Ben is accepting guilt for not protecting the family like he knows he should have. Trey being there explains the man shoe print. Elementary. Hey, thank you so much for the follow, Subadubdub23. My name is Maude. This is the channel Maude Garrett. I run a company called Geek Bomb. We do book club, and this is the book, Gillian Flynn's Dark Places. We've read the first half of it. What? We're getting rated. Thank you so much, Michelle Boyd, for the raid. I really appreciate you. It is Wednesday night. It is book club night. We do a book club every single... No, sorry. This was so full when we started. It was so full. The first and second Wednesday of every single month, we do a book chat. It is one book every single month. Thank you so much to N Crisp, who's subscribed for their 19th month in a row, 22nd all up. Hillest for the follow. Sim Paradox for the follow. Charles Farmer 01 for the follow. Nicole Evelina Author for the follow. Hey, we got an author in the house. Welcome. We do book club over here. Being October, we decided to do a little bit of a thriller book. Gillian Flynn is the author of two other books that we have covered with Nerdist, being Gone Girl and Sharp Objects. Sharp Objects is a show on HBO with Amy. Someone unmute. Amy
Adams.
Amy Adams is the protagonist, and Gone Girl had Ben Affleck and Rosamund Pike. An amazing book. We've covered that over the years for the book clubs that I've done, but we're up to Gillian Flynn's Dark Places. Hey guys, it's a little bit of a bummer book. If you're in a good mood and you start reading this, you may not be in such a great mood. May require wine. Suit KHS gift. It's probably a better way to say that. Thank you so much for the follow. Appreciate you. Terry reminds us that Dark Places is a movie with Charlize Theron, but the casting's a little bit and the book's a bit better than the movie, which is often the case. There are two books which I will die on the hill that the book is so much better than the movie. No, where the movie's better than the book. My bad. The book's always better than the movie. The book is always better than the movie, except two cases. Sim Paradox says the Boyd Band's here. Nicole Evelina Author says Boyd Band is here with the raid. We got a little shout out to... No. Shout out Michelle Boyd. There you go. Amanda Tass, you've done like a lot of research into how to be a great mod. You're playing Resident Evil 2. Why? That sounds so scary. Why would you play that game? Lisa says the Princess Bride is one, right? Yes. Got it. The movie's better than the book. The movie is better than the book. They trim the fat. The movie's better than the book. Fix It Richie says agreed, Maude. Fuck, the movie's so much better than the book. I feel so bad. I'm coming back. Hold on. I gotta shove it. The book. I got a bookcase stitch. Come on. Ken Knapsack's book's in the way. No, it's Chris Taylor. Oh. All right, I'm back. The biggest problem that The Princess Bride had was that in 1986, they had no way of figuring out how to advertise it because they're like, well, it's a little bit of everything. And the marketing was what? Hurt the movie. Best movie of all time. KP Dubs has gifted a sub to Nicole Evelina Author. Thank you so much for doing that. Welcoming people in. Kate, aka Miss Necromancer, says, I like the Lord of the Rings movies better than the books. There you go. It does happen. Thierry says, in the case of Gone Girl, both are equally good. We do have an emote here for book club where we ask you, is book good? Is book good? If you haven't read Gillian Flynn Dark Places, don't worry. We did just spend the last 1 hour and 47 minutes talking about it. Book is good. Book is heavy. We've read the first half of it. We're trying to figure out if the teenage boy who is in jail for murdering his two sisters and mother did actually do that. That's what we're trying to figure out. So a little bit of a backstory about this book. Dark Places by Gillian Flynn begins with the main character, Libby Day, talking about her life. I'm getting this from bookrags.com. Several members of Libby's family were murdered when she was only 7 years old. To make matters worse, the killer was her older brother, Ben. Libby has been living off inheritance money and all the funds that were raised to help take care of her after the murders. Now, Libby is running out of money and doesn't have any serviceable skills. She's approached by someone named Lyle, who runs what he calls the Kill Club. Now, the Kill Club... No, can't do that one. Where's my water? The Kill Club is a group that is obsessed with studying crimes and criminals. They're fascinated with Libby because many of the members believe that Ben is innocent. Lyle is willing to pay Libby to speak with them, and she agrees because she needs the money. The club members bring up a lot of details that the cops either missed or ignored, pointing out that her testimony was forced, given that she didn't actually see any of the murders. It didn't help that during the 80s, everyone was afraid of satanic cults. Supposedly, Ben committed the murders because he was part of such a cult. At first, Libby didn't believe them, but she needed to keep seeing the group because they're paying her. She's got no money. After a few more visits, she finally gets the courage to see her brother in prison, something that she'd never done. After speaking with him, she starts to accept that, hey, maybe he wasn't the killer, but she knows that he is holding something back. The story switches between Libby's investigation in the present and then what happened on the night in 1985 leading up to the murders. This section explores the dysfunctional family relationships that Libby had. Her family was incredibly poor. They practically grew up without Runner, their father. He only showed up whenever he needed money. When he did show up, he was cruel to the family. Ben was struggling at school and felt like he didn't belong in the world. He was upset and angry, and his only real friend was his girlfriend, Deandra. And even Deandra treated him like a second-class citizen, as did her friend Trey, who was frequently around. That's kind of essentially what we've been talking about this whole time. We've been talking about what happens in childhood to create either projection, troubled relationships with boundaries, or can make you more of an unstable person. JDOS95 says, is she the chick from Camp Orange Nickelodeon? Yes. I don't know if you get bonus points for knowing that, but 2007 was a wild year, and 8 and 9. Where are we at now? What is that, 14 years ago? No! KBW was just gifted JDOS 95 because you were born in 95? That kind of checks out time-wise. So JDOS is talking about the show that I hosted in 2007, 8, and 9 on Nickelodeon called Camp Orange. Yeah. We watched a clip of it. When I was like, oh, what was it? What was the line? It sounded so Australian. Something like something about slime, something about nature. Oh, I'll never forget that. But I actually forgot it. Kate says, Lyle even framed the women who were focused on Lizette, the kidnapped girl in the background, as weirdos because they were more focused on the victim rather than the crime itself or on the killer, like the rest of the Kill Club and Crime Con. And that's just so much worse because he was framing it that way to a literal victim. Oh. Yes, gross. Ugh. Hold on, Catch-22, you think Lyle did it? No.
I did briefly, probably because I watch too many profiler shows like Criminal Minds, and they always say that the killer tries to insert themselves into the investigation.
Yeah, because they're like obsessed with it all.
But that was like halfway through the first half of the book, and then towards the end when we got a closer look at the relationship between Ben and Deandra and Trey is when I finally was like, I think Trey did it. I think Trey did it as part of something to do with trying to get Ben to do it, and then it just got super out of hand.
Lisa makes a great point as well. Lyle is younger than Libby. Dude's just young.
See, I didn't realize that either. But that tracks.
Alvac says we should hold some sort of chat-type Camp Orange competition while Maude hosts and eliminates each contestant. I will say, because we were dealing with kids that were 11 and 12, we didn't eliminate anyone because we didn't want to traumatize children. We didn't want to be like, you weren't good enough on a national program. I looked up some of the themes about dark places. Sympathy money, death, Libby's injuries, Ben's phone line. Let's read some of these. Oh, wait, I have to pay a $20 monthly subscription for it. No, thank you. So some of the themes are sympathy money. As the name implies, the money that Libby inherited represents the sympathy and the guilt that everyone felt after the murders. Most of the money was donated to her from the community. Oi, shut up. Death is a symbol. Many of the Day family idolize death because to them it represents the ultimate release. Death is a representation of how depressed Libby, Ben, and Patty are at various points throughout the book. During those times, they completely give up on everything and just want a release. Yep, got that one. Libby's injuries. Libby constantly focuses on the injuries that she received the night of the murders. To her, they are a constant reminder of the horrible things that happened the night she lost her family. I will add to these notes and saying that they are a point that make her different when everyone is so desperate to fit in as a child. She was ridiculed for not having all of her toes. So she was literally held apart And that was a distinguishable trait that made her stand out for being different. She didn't do anything. That sucks. I'm sure those injuries will be important when eventually figuring out the murderer. Ooh, okay. Ben's phone line. Are we seriously on symbols and objects?
Are you talking about Libby's injuries?
Are you talking about what? Libby's injuries, yeah.
No, she lost her bits of her finger and toes because of frostbite.
Yeah, exactly.
Because she ran away in the cold in her PJs.
Yeah.
And so
then the doctor was
no connection with the crimes.
No, she was in that position because of the crime.
Yes.
And then
they're not clues about the crime.
And then afterwards, the doctor, there was like a secondary kind of like assessment about the injuries, and it's like, you probably didn't need them removed. It's just the doctor from a small town just like had insane precautions and just like did it because why not? How messed up's that? Ben's phone line is another key piece. In the chapters set in 1985, Ben wants to get a second phone line. To Patty, this represents his secretive side and how he wants to pull ... I don't get it because I didn't pay for it. Then there's also the day places and settings. The day farm, Libby's home, Deondra's home. Cool. I like this site. I'm not going to pay for it. I'm just not. How do I go to next section? Themes and motifs. Theme, relying on others. This theme is largely shown in the beginning of the book with Libby. After the rest of the day family was murdered, Libby received a large sum of money. Some of it was from insurance, but the rest of it was money that the community raised to take care of her. Everyone was sympathetic towards Libby and walked on eggshells around her. As a result, an adult Libby was completely unable to take care of herself. She was so used to receiving money, she just couldn't imagine how she would get a job. It's not that she couldn't imagine how to get a job. She couldn't function in a stable environment from day to day. She didn't have the resilience she wasn't reliable. Some days she'd be fine. Other days she could not get out of bed. And that is from severe PTSD. She lost the ability to function. It wasn't because people were giving her money. Kate, I'm the same on that one. I think that that's bullshit. That's actually that is minimizing what happened to her. What are your thoughts? It's 7:02.
It's just framing it in like this kind of capitalistic way that's like, oh, well, you know, she was just bad with money. It's like she can't even pay her bills.
She can't function.
She doesn't have gas for months because she can't put ducks in a row to like call the gas company. Like, how is she supposed to work a job?
Yes, I agree. We are on the same page. I feel like that completely minimizes her.
I also just feel that it says like the sympathy money. Sympathy money is a lot sadder than that website gives it credit for because
there's a dependency.
It's also that we see it all the time too with victimhood, that when she was a cute little orphan, people wanted to give her money because it's like, oh, look at this cute little orphan, I'm so sorry for her. But as she got older, no longer, because she wasn't like the perfect victim anymore. She wasn't a little girl anymore. She wasn't innocent anymore. Had trauma. It's the same thing with, like, we talk about mental illness a lot. People only like to support mental illness if it fits in their box of mental illness, like, you know, sitting in a dark room listening to sad music. Don't show trauma, the ugliness, the frustration of dealing with someone as so as Libby grew up and dealt with her trauma, she wasn't the cute little girl anymore. She was problematic. She was combative. So yeah, time went on. People forget over time, but it's also because she survived. It's not like Jean-Benet Ramsey, who's this like little girl, immortalized like that forever. And everyone's just like, I don't want to deal with the ramifications. What happened to you? So I'm just going to move on to the next victim victim, who in the background of the story is Lizette, the girl who's
Yes.
been kidnapped.
Who she's immediately jealous of. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like, but what is Libby supposed to do? She can't.
Agree.
Supposed to work in an office? She can't work.
She doesn't. She cannot have a normal life because she wasn't given a normal life. When that happens at 7, it shapes your entire future, and it's really, really hard. Like I feel like when we look at expectations of work, it is every single week you need to be in a place where you can show up, be dependable, last this length of time. And she's just like, I can't do that. I don't have the stamina or the capacity, having gone through what I have, to get out of bed every single day and do a job. That's just not happening. And if there is a wave of income, that stream of sort of like, you know what, I have sympathy, and they're going to help me, there is a dependence that does happen with that. I get that. Interesting though. I'm glad we spoke about it. Michelle says, question, is there also a link between reliving her trauma and then receiving her money/support, and it creating a reward cycle between her pain and receiving what she needs to survive? I would absolutely agree with that, which is why she and Lyle have any kind of relationship. She's dependent on money. She would rather work in bursts and not this commitment. And she even says that. She's like, cool, I just have to go up there and talk about it, basically decompartmentalize for a couple of hours, and I'll have $500. She's like, that's worth it to me. I can monetize my emotions, my presence, and then memorabilia, which she has completely detached from and does not need, and is willing to exploit her own, like have exploitation of her own, which is like, you're so obsessed with this, then I'm going to exploit you for your money and your obsession, so that I'll give you this letter and I'll take that money because I need it. Lisa says she's got no real life skills. Play the Board says, I wonder if she didn't heal better because of the coaching that she received from her testimony. There you go. Catch-22 says, Libby literally does not know how to adult. She was never shown. I wonder if a problem with people, if there's a problem with people that bounce around the foster care program as well.
I wonder if that's a problem that with people with, and then they bounce around the foster care program.
What's the problem?
If they don't know how to adult, they're not shown how to live on their own and, you know, pay bills and function as a grown-up.
If they are if the traumatized are finding more strength and power and control and retaliation than adaptation. Heavy, I know. I remember going through the conversations of like, do I have kids? Do I adopt? And I'm a little bit like, not using Christianity of like, I'm so blessed to be able to love the unlovable. But I was like, who needs love the most? I really was. And it's like, a big part of why I liked working at Nickelodeon was the sort of like 11 to 15-year-old age demographic, where I felt like they were overlooked or weren't heard as much, and they just needed someone to be able to relate and to talk with them like they're people. And I was like, because I think they're the coolest, that age group. I don't know. I think that's the coolest. And younger than that need a little bit more hand holding. The other ones you can like, hey, cool, we can do life lessons now. But there is a lot more volatility or rejection, rebellion, defined identity. And I was like inquiring. I was like, what is the state? What is it like to sort of adopt from 10 or older? Double digits adopting. Because like especially like 14, 15, 16. Adoption's like, I want a baby from birth, so it's mine. But I'm like fostering, the most neglected 14, 15, 16. And the feedback that I got was the most difficult, the pain and trauma that they've suffered has basically grafted, like it's shaped them by that stage. And that it's best to not have a foster son and a foster daughter because the tendencies of the boy, and that the girl would be unsafe. And I was like, whoa, that was a lot to hear. Holy dooly. But then the next thought was, if they're the hardest, or most troubling, that means they need more, they need love even more. Because it is hard. And you saw Libby's rebellion. Her aunt took her in. She stole her credit card and sold it. She stole, she fought, she killed the dog. And that was the last straw. And that sounds really, really tough. But Tim says, my brother and sister-in-law fostered and adopted 2 teens. Those kids are amazing. That's it. It's Ami Abondo says, yeah, it's a pretty hard task to take on. I've had a few friends do that in the past. I don't know. I think it's kind of ridiculous that it's like, well, this is easier for me. I don't know. The reason why I got Zelda, a big part of why I got Zelda is because in LA, black dogs are the least adopted. So I know it's not like a human part of it, and I know it's not at that level, but there is still a part of me where it's like, what? That makes no sense. No, LA like white fluffy dogs, and black dogs were usually more ignored. Same with black cats, but that's more superstition. But black dogs get adopted far less than white dogs. And so I was like, I will get a little black dog. And this is the best thing that ever happened to me. So I am kind of copy pasting, being like, well, I will do the same. You just have to have a lot of love and compassion. At the end of the day, that's all it is. KP Dub seeing all the new emotes for Zelda. It's me, Bondo, subscribed for a year. Bondo, 1 year. Lovely to have you here. I really appreciate that. We've gone overtime. My bedtime's in 40 minutes because I'm getting up at 3 a.m. Fuck. I'm glad we got to talk about this book. Your homework, finish it. We are, reading Gillian Flynn's Dark Places. It's a heavy book. We are talking about murder. We are talking about trauma. We are talking about hard lives. We're talking about shitty people. But the conversation's been really amazing, really thought-provoking, really wonderful. Just to wrap up some of the comments that I think I have missed. Lisa says, Libby, our protagonist, her growth was stunted because of the emotional trauma and the way people dealt with her after it. Kate says it's mirrored in how she's willing to sell the memories of her family for money. Her trauma was already sold for that sympathy money. So it's the echo of that. And then Kate says, I mean, I get looked down upon and made to feel guilty because I can't work 40 hours a week because of my trauma. The social pressure to do that full work week and give yourself over to your job is like a slave is massive. So someone like Libby who can't even do a small fraction of that is just lost forever in our society. Yeah, there's an expectation that exceeds means. I hear you on that. Have a great flight, Maude. Yay, I got a middle seat on a 6 a.m. flight. Whoop, whoop. KP Dubs is going to stay up until 3 a.m. to watch Andor. Woo. I'll try and show you pictures of New York. That'll be fun. If we were to raid, because I know we still got some of the Boyd band here. Who should we pass this on to? We got some Chow Jordan, Luscious Lose here, Stephen Spawn, Guy Judge is online, Pixel Circus is doing some D&D. What are we feeling like? Any Rex? Ciao. I hope those of you going to New York Comic Con have a great time and safe travels. I really hope I don't get COVID. That'd suck. I really want to work. Steven, says Amanda Tass. Okay. I like Steven Spawn. He's a good egg. He is a sassy motherfucker too. And I always respect people who are sassy. Did I get that? No, slash raid Maude. Wow, that sucked. Book chat good. I already got done for swearing. Did you preempt that? Was that preemptive? Did you see that I got it wrong? It's like, Maude's gonna swear. What? Oh, I got the name wrong. I'm not swearing. Steve. In. How was that not right? I got it. Oh, the I. God damn it. Raid's been created. Drop some bombs. Say hi to Steve. He's a legend. He's doing amazing things. He's such a great advocate for the disabled community. He's making sure that games are having more accessibility. He literally games using his head. It's so impressive. He's so cool. Anyone who also can tease me, they're in with my books. All right, bye guys.